Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, make sure you hit that subscribe and notification button because my guest today is going to knock your socks off. Now, you guys know I've been in sales for almost 35 years, but if I have questions about sales, I go to him. He has an amazing company. He's the CEO of it. So we're going to be talking sales, branding, marketing, everything you need to know to crush it in 22 and 23. Raylen, brother, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here, Richard. What's going on, man? Good to see you.
I'm just enjoying life, brother, having fun. Holiday season's coming up. I'm drinking my eggnog, eating all the good food now. But I had to get up and do my cardio this morning. So I had to get my lazy ass up and do my cardio this morning. My first question I have, because if I don't answer it, I'll forget it. I had one of the Iron Chefs on, Simon Majumdar, a couple
Nice.
weeks, and he said since this pandemic started, we've lost over 100,000 restaurants in the United States and many more businesses. So we know a lot of people have to be resilient in business.
hmm
What is your definition of resiliency?
So, first of all, it's a great question. It's something that I think about quite often, mainly because, like, for me growing up, the one skill set that I constantly heard time and time again is, "Man, you were a resilient kid. Like, you're very resilient," and that carried on throughout my life. And I think one of the things that maybe you know or don't know, like my purpose in life and also for our business is helping people remove excuses and obstacles so they can realize they deserve more. That's literally all Elevated is about. Whether it's through our coaching, whether it's through the agency, like that's the only reason why we're around. And the reason for that is because when I was a kid, my father went away to prison when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. Saw a lot of things as a kid, a lot of domestic violence, had, traumatic, very traumatic childhood. And that was one thing, resilient. You're resilient. What? And then I remember at one point, I think in high school, I was like, what the hell does resilience even mean? Like, like how can you not only create that on your own, but how can you give that to others? Because for me, it was all about decoding success, right? Like, what makes me be successful, and then how can I give that to other people? And that was the key, was resilience. But once again, what the hell is it? And for me, this is my definition of what resilience is: it's being too stupid to know I can't do something. That's it. That's it. It's like, for me, it's I am just too dumb to know to stay down, to rest, to I just don't know. So it's funny because literally my favorite movie of all time is Forrest Gump. And I remember that was like back when people used to actually watch movies on TV. It would come on, I couldn't turn it off. Like, we all have that movie that it comes on, you're like halfway through and you're like, I gotta leave it on. It's Forrest Gump. And I remember thinking, why? Well, it's because, again, the whole point of the movie for Forrest, anyway, the lesson I picked up from it was, once again, he was too dumb to know he couldn't do something. Oh, I'll be this, I'll be a model football player, right? Why not, start a shrimp company? Why not? So for me, if we're looking at resilience and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, how could I be more resilient? I think that the question is how. It's more so, how can I just focus on what I need to focus on in the present moment, not worry about the past, not stress about the future, but how can I remain mostly in the present moment, accept what is, and then just continue to do the work. And for me, that's what I think. Ronald, yes, it's a
I,
phenomenal movie.
I love that movie. So back real quick because you just brought me back. Um, I grew up. My mother was an addict. My father left. Had stepfather issues. All that crap. But for me, my coping mechanisms were books. That
Mhm.
is how I coped. And I became a voracious reader. I think I've read over 6,000 books. I'm only a ninth grade dropout, but I think I've read over 6,000 books. And I got 15 books going as we speak now, plus one audio tape when I work out.
Yeah.
So as you're going through all the trauma, what was the one thing that kept you sane?
Well, you have to remember too, I was pretty young when I was going through this. So at the time, it was life. Like, I didn't know any different, right? Like, when you grow up in an environment that's chaotic, you just assume that that's how everyone lives. It wasn't until like my father went away to prison and then we moved to the suburbs and we were like the poorest kids in the suburbs and we got evicted and moved to this motel for a while. That's when it started to click. Oh, this is not normal. It's not normal that like all my other friends had, a family unit. They're eating dinner together. You know what I mean? Like their parents know where their kids are. Like, oh, that's normal. I'm the one that's not normal. And so for me, the thing that kept us going, at least for me anyway, was sports. That was probably number one. That was the thing that, and my coaches really helped because I was a wrestler and a football player and whatever. But I think for me, it was like, I just need to focus on this one thing and have goals. So for me, you escaped through books, right? And I would imagine the throwing yourself in that world was the thing that kind of kept you going. For me, it was my escape was trying to get out of the situation. Like, can I prevent these things? And I kind of stumbled upon, entrepreneurship in a weird way because my high school wrestling coach, Coach Smith, was the first entrepreneur I met and the first millionaire I ever met. And I remember him sitting me down one day and we're talking on his front porch in Raylen, Michigan. And he goes, son, I'm a millionaire. And we're talking about business and money and finance. And obviously I didn't come from money. So I don't know anything about that. I remember I was so Richard, when he said I'm a millionaire, I was so confused. I was like, what do you mean? Like, did you win the lottery? Like, I didn't compute in my head that you could provide a service or a product to some people and a bunch of people can buy it and you could have $1 million in your bank account. And it was in that moment that I realized, one, it was possible. And I think for me anyway, it was access to possibility that helped me get through. Because when you grow up in an environment that's chaotic like that and also traumatic and all those things, until you can see a door, until you can see opportunity, you don't know it's possible. And then once I saw that it was possible, I could, create something worth creating. Oh, I could have a normal life, or I could, be a state champion. Once I saw the possibility, then that became my motivation. So I think for us and kind of what we do, like that's my only purpose in life is just show people the door. It's just, I want you to know the door exists. I can't make you walk through it, Richard, but at least that I could do is say, hey, this door actually exists.
All right. So now let me ask you a question. We're talking about that because I've been blessed to have billionaires come on the show. I've been blessed to have Navy SEALs, Delta Force, special ops, professional athletes, professional wrestlers, and you can name them. They've been on the show. And I would say a major portion of them, when we went back to their past, a lot of them said they learned so many life lessons from the mat. Because they would say a lot of times, like when they were going through Hell Week and as Navy SEALs, they would think back to when they had to cut weight during Thanksgiving and they had to eat dried chicken and broccoli while everybody was pigging out. And when they were on the mat, realizing that if I get pinned, it's my fault. Yeah. I have to take. So talk to us about what you learned on the mat that helped you as an adult.
Yeah. So I credit wrestling with just about everything. Like that gave me my foundation. Like that was my church. Wrestling was my dad, because I didn't have one. It was everything. And first and foremost, I think which is interesting, is that I accidentally became a wrestler. So like, I started wrestling late. I'm from Michigan and I started wrestling in sixth grade, which is pretty late for wrestling. I know people when I wrestled in college, like I had friends that were wrestling since they were 5. But I went out to wrestling because the girl I liked at the time in middle school had a boyfriend that I heard was going out for the wrestling team. And in my head, I go, oh, well, if I go to wrestling with him and beat him, like I'll probably I'll get the girl. Like in my head, it made sense at the time, Richard, don't judge me. But he didn't show up. And so the coach was like, you got to stay here now. So that's how I actually started my wrestling journey. But I think the biggest lesson for me was that extreme ownership, like as Jocko would say, but that's where I first learned it was you can't blame anybody when you lose. Like it's only you. And time again, I started getting really excited about that solo journey. And it's important to have and get help. And I think as entrepreneurs, we really suck at that sometimes, asking for help. But wrestling gave you that first like know-how of how to do it alone. And here's what I mean, right? So my senior year, I'm going to the state championships, but I'm the only person on my team that made it to states. So it's me and like 2 other volunteers from the wrestling team that are staying back and my coaches that are helping me prepare. So for 2 weeks, the entire team that at the start was like, I'm going to be at states with you. I'm going to help you. They're all gone. They're at home chilling, playing video games. And it's me and a coach, and oftentimes by myself training. And it's really easy when no one's looking to go like, well, everyone else is at home. But it kind of teaches you it's okay to struggle by yourself. And I think the most important thing that wrestling teaches you is suffering. Yeah. Like I call it now voluntary suffering, because we don't have to go to practice. We're adults and we can sleep in if we want to. We can do all these things. And for me, it's like, if you voluntarily suffer, suffering's going to come to you regardless. And I think it prepares you for that suck. I mean, it's called embrace the suck for a reason, but it's like one of those things where you have to get used to that uncomfortability, that suffering. And I think wrestlers do it the best. And that's why they make really good entrepreneurs and salespeople in general. Like back when I used to run a sales team, first question I asked, like, hey, do you have any wrestling experience? Because it was like, I knew if you're a wrestler, you can make it through that hard thing. So for me, it was just learning how to suffer. Yep. Was the biggest thing that wrestling gave me.
And one of my friends that came on, his name is John McCaskill, retired Navy SEAL commander. He actually wrote the book, Embrace the Suck. So I totally get the sucking part. But I have a question to ask you, because for me, I grew up very poor also, where money was a taboo subject. We never talked about it. I never learned how to balance a checking account until I got locked up in the military for writing a bad check. What do you mean I'm out of money? I still have checks, that kind of thing. Until I picked up the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. Now, I had the authors of that book on, and we talked about it. But for you, it seemed like your home life, you had the poor mentality. And then when you were talking with this millionaire, there's the rich mentality. So you were kind of walking a line. What was it like walking, talk 1 minute after school and practice, you're talking to this wealthy millionaire. And then when you go back home, you're back into poverty. What was that like?
Yeah. So for me, money. All right. So this is what I learned from the 2 people. It wasn't about the money. It was that my family historically are victims. In their mindset, yes, like we went through something, and I want to make sure this is clear, because sometimes I get in trouble talking about this. All right, so like to me, we went through a very traumatic experience. My father, again, domestic violence, we abuse, kidnapping, like you name it, we went through it. Okay, in that moment, we were victims. However, when the moment passes, you have a choice. So I like to think of like victimhood and victim mentality as like a tunnel. Like imagine like an underground tunnel, and people are driving with their cars. Like when the moment happens, you have nowhere to go. In that moment, you're a victim. You can't go anywhere. You're just trapped in a tunnel. But there's always that, those little like service doors every few, quarter of a mile or so, there's a service tunnel. That's your escape from that. You can make a choice not to be that anymore. And here's what I found. In my family, we stayed in that victim mentality. It was our excuse for everything, right? And I love my school to death, and I love my city, but where I grew up in Michigan, they cared so much, but they kept me in that victim mentality. Oh, you had a bad grade, Raylen. It's okay because your father's in prison, because you guys are, barely eating at home. You guys are going through this. You guys are going through that. So they gave me that out. And so when I look at how we were living, and then I fast forward to meeting my wrestling coach, who was, the entrepreneur and the millionaire, here's what I realized. He never made any excuses. Like, yes, he would bring up something that happened in his life, but he would always talk about the lesson he learned from it and how he moved forward from it. And so what was the difference in terms of money? Again, it's odd, but it has nothing to do with money. One group of individuals stayed in, we don't have money, so we can't do this. The other person said, at the beginning, when he first started his company, he said, I don't have money to start this company, but what can I do now? It's the but what now part that matters the most. So then all I did was I made a choice. Okay, dude, which one makes the most sense and which one would serve me the most? Is it this line of thinking or this line of thinking? And I think for me, I don't like, I'm not an avid saver. I'm not one of those types. I'm one of those types that goes, there's more money to get. Like any point in my career, whether it was when I was starting and when I was in corporate or as an entrepreneur, because look, I've been doing this for 3-4 years now. The first 2 years, I wasn't making any money. Like I was barely getting by, but I still had that resilient attitude. Why? Because I knew there's more money out there. I just had to figure out how to go get it. Like it's not a matter of, because there's people that I know that are like, I'm not good enough. Money doesn't care. Money doesn't care who you are. Doesn't care about your background. You just have to figure out how to go get it, and that's it. So for me, that was my biggest learning lesson from that, was just simply how to think about money, which was there's enough for everybody. Let's just go get it.
And I love that, and I think that's why I wear this shirt. It's called "Today I Decide."
Yeah.
You can either decide to be a victim or a victor. It's up to you. But now also, going back to that, one of my best friends who I truly, dearly love, his father is serving life for multiple serial rapists. And he had a brother, and his brother became an addict and eventually passed away because of addiction. And I asked his addict brother, why did you turn out the way you did? And he said, because my father did what he did. And then my best friend became a police officer and retired as a police officer. And I asked him, why'd you become a police officer? He said, because of what my father did. No. So it's amazing how the decisions that we make, even a split-second decision, can change your whole life, correct?
Yeah, and here's where I have trouble with both those statements, actually. And I go back and forth about this with my, one of our coaches we have on staff. He's a branding coach. Him and I go back and forth on this because, so in both scenarios, the power, so to speak, was given to somebody else's decision. So I became a cop because of what my father did. He gave his power away to his father. Same thing over here, right? The addict gave his power away. So in just based off like the situation alone, they're both victims. They have two different outcomes.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets interesting, right? And this is a lot what we talk about in Elevated, and that's I think what my company Elevated is about. It's yes, we're gonna make money, but let's figure out the things that create resistance in our life, and it's usually us. And this is the stuff that like we talk about is never giving your power away. So what exactly does that mean? It means to make a choice based on something that you want because you want it, and not making a choice because of a circumstance, story, or an excuse. So, and we all do this, by the way, like, I can't go and invest here on a coach, or I can't go and I can't go sell yet because I don't have like there's always an excuse. But if you just made decisions or choices based upon this is what I know is necessary, and you go and do those things more often, and you don't have that resistance, better things come. So, I mean, I don't know. Again, both those examples are people that got an outcome, but it's an outcome that they created based off of somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird thing to look at, but it's going back and going, okay, I'm here today. How did I get here? Is it my choice, or is it because of something that happened or whatever? And then from there, you can decide to stay in that or not. It's like, for me, again, my purpose is wrapped around my pain as a child, right? Yeah. I didn't realize that I deserved more. So again, going back to what I said earlier, it was created because of my father. Like that's sort of the whole thing. But once you're aware of it, you now have choice, right? It's a conscious choice. It's a conscious choice for me to stay in it and deliver help to others because of my pain. However, what's really unfortunate for a lot of people is they're going through life on autopilot, right? Like something happened to them, put them on this path, and they're just automatically going down this momentum's carrying them down a path that they don't want to be on. And very few of us stop for a second to go, is this what I even want? Like one of the first questions I ask people that work with us, it's an odd question, but I go, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Oh, I want to make $1 million. Okay. Do you really want that? And are you willing to do the actions it's going to require to get there? Because what most people struggle with is what they want and their actions are not aligned. So I want, again, let's use the primary example, right? Everyone wants to be a millionaire or have a successful business, let's say. All right, well, what are you doing every day? Well, their actions are obviously way over here. They're acting like maybe a 6-figure coach, or they're acting like even a 5-figure coach, but they're not acting like a 7-figure coach. All right. Are you willing to do the behaviors necessary to get you here? Well, no. Well, here's the hard question then is, do you even want this? And it's okay that you don't want this, but you have to, your actions have to be aligned, and you have to choose to actually do those actions to get what you want. Otherwise, stop bitching about what you don't have because you actually don't want it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah. Now, and I definitely want to dig deep, real quick. I want to thank our sponsors because I want to dig deep in everything we just talked about. I want to dig deep into habits because I'm a big habit guy. I'm a big personal development guy, so I can't wait to dig a little bit deeper. But first, as you guys know, I was with GNC and health and fitness industry for over 30 years, plus in the military. And I loved pre-workouts. I loved coffee, but they all tasted like ass, and they didn't give me that great kick, and it didn't give me and I got a big crash afterwards. So I created our own coffee called Vertical Momentum Coffee, hand roasted by veteran hands. It's also twice the energy, twice the taste, no crash. But the best thing is, if anybody buys any of the coffee from now until the end of the year, 100% of the profits go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. Also, guys, if you like buying, like our swag, our t-shirts, hats, anything you buy from us, 100% of the proceeds will go to help people struggling, because there's a lot of people struggling today, and that's what we're here to help. That's why we do what we do here. So, okay, I want to get into sales because I love sales. And I hear all the time, I hear people say, well, I hate sales. And I ask them, I said, are you married? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, somebody sold somebody, bought somebody that day. So if everybody is in sales one way or another, and sales really hasn't changed over the last 200 years. So let's take a deep dive into sales. What was your first dive into sales?
So I sold tuxedos in high school. That was my first introduction into it. And I'm thankful for that because, again, it wasn't a typical sales job. Like, I wasn't selling widgets. I was really selling. I realized later on I was selling a dream, right? Like, if you came in, and it was mostly like high school kids coming in for prom, right? Well, you have a vision for how you see that going. You walk into your high school, everyone turns and goes, man, he looks good tonight. Like, you want that dream to happen. My job was to get you a little bit closer to that vision. So that was a good experience. And then from there, I sold gym memberships at used to be called 24-Hour Gym, and then it turned into LA Fitness, I think. Yeah. And then once again, I stumbled upon this idea of selling a dream. So I remember there's a guy that I had called, and every time I called him, he was like, hey, I'm going to come in and I'll check out the gym. I go, perfect. Didn't show up. Every single time I book an appointment for him to come check out the gym, guy doesn't show up. And so finally I called him, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little frustrated. And so that's why I stumbled upon this realization, probably the wrong way, but I go, you've told me 3 times now that you're going to come to the gym and check it out. And when we had this call, you told me the reason why you want to do this is for your son. Can you be a little bit more specific about what you meant by that? He goes, well, Raylen, I'm out of shape. We went to the playground the other day. I was out of breath playing with him, and I kind of realized, like, and he's young and he's a little bit older. I think he was in his 50s, but his kid was young, like 2-3 years old. And so he's like, if I want to be around for my kid, I got to get to the gym. And I go, is it possible that you actually don't give a shit about your kid? And he goes, excuse me? What do you mean? I go, you say that is your purpose. You want to be alive for your kid, but your actions are not coming into the gym. I don't even care if you come to this gym anymore. I want to know, why is it that you say that this is your purpose, but you're not showing up to the gym? Explain that to me. And then finally, like that day, he showed up to the gym. So, right. And so what did I stumble upon? I realized that in order to truly help somebody, you got to understand their purpose. Like, what is the thing that they want to achieve? Why do they want to achieve it? And then your job is to help inspire them to take the first action. Then it's up to the company, it's up to the product or the service to help retain that individual. But that was that. So finally, I got into for-profit education. So I was selling educational programs. And in 3 years, went from entry level to VP, and that's where I got my coaching chops. But once again, same thing there. I realized I wasn't selling an educational program. I was selling a dream. You come to me and say, this is the life that I want to live. And I go, cool. Here's that dream. We can take the first step together. Do you want to do this? Or do you want to go? And I love the language we used there. We called it was called enrollment. It wasn't called sales. And this is why even now for our programs, I call them enrollments, because it's not about a transaction for us. It's about a transformation, right? It's actually, if you read What's in It for Them by Joe Polish, he mentions this. And I think too, Dan Sullivan is another one that mentions this as well, but it's not about a transaction. It's about a transformation. And so for us, when I say we're enrolling another, entrepreneur into our coaching program, or we're enrolling another person into our agency, it's because enrollment is a lifelong kind of commitment. It's not even about a commitment to us as the product, it's a commitment to yourself. You're enrolled into the path that's going to set you to where you want to go, which is the dream. If I make a sale, cool. It just feels very transactional to me. And that's why I think language is incredibly important when it comes to sales. It's like, there's some people that come to me and go, Raylen, like you mentioned earlier, I hate sales. All right, stop selling people, man. What do you want to do instead? I want to transform their life. Okay, so let's do that. Like, I don't care what language you use. For me, enrollment makes sense. I like the word enrollment. I hate sales. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think language is also important. But for the people that hate sales, I think you just got to find your version of it. And there's so many different ways to sell. I mean, yes, you're right in that sales have been the same for forever. And it's right, because all sales is persuasion. It's really, how can I get you out of your own way so you can have what you want? That's to me, that's what sales is. It's how can I get you out of your own way so you can have what you want? Like, that's all the job is. Now, how you set that up and the frame for that is really, I think, dependent on the person that sells. Like for me, I like to sell through service, and I like to sell through coaching. I call it coaching people to the sale. I come into sales interactions trying to help you. Like, I'm coming in here, I'm going to give you a strategy that's going to help you get you where you want to be. At the end of this call, your job is to decide whether or not you want to do it with me, or have me do it for you, or you want to do it on your own. But my intention on this call is to sell you out of your own way so that you can have what you want. And how that happens really is up to you, but also it's how I'm going to make money. So it's a win-win.
And of that, I had one of the gentlemen that handles all of Gary Vaynerchuk's and all of Tony Robbins's events. And he said, Rich, do you know that Gary knows and Tony knows that 97% of the people that came to this week's show next year are going to come to that week's show, because only 3% of the people that are sitting in that chair are actually going to act upon what they are taught that day.
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, I think why coaching is so important is because anybody can read a book, anybody can get a tape, but when you actually have an accountability, somebody to be accountable to, I think it makes it a lot more effective. And I also, like my friend, Mr. Russell Brunson always talks about, people that pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk to us a little bit, because I know a lot of people that when they first started out coaching, they gave it away for free, and nobody that they gave it to actually did the work. But when they started charging for it and people were starting to pay for it, is when they actually put in the action.
Yeah. And listen, when I first started as well, I did it for free, but it was simply to figure out if this is what I wanted to do or not. So when I left the, corporate, to be honest, I didn't leave. I got a severance package because they closed it down. They're like, here's a nice big check. Sorry that we went out of business kind of check, And so that's, I was like, all right, well, let's figure out what I want to do. And so I started out doing coaching because one, I needed to figure out what my program, how I was going to be different as a coach and all those things. But you're right. Like, those people that I was coaching for free weren't taking action. And so I think how I look at it is you're putting your money where your mouth is. It's an investment to make sure you execute. And to be honest with you, like, I don't know. I go back and forth on this, if I'm being honest. Like, what is the purpose of a coach? Like, a lot of people get coaches for the information, but here's the truth, man. Like, everything that I teach, you can find in the books that I've read. You can find on YouTube, probably. Like, the information that I have is not really unique. You could argue that maybe I look at things a little bit differently. And I think people like us, we're avid readers, right? Obviously you more than me, but as a reader, I think one of the things that we can do and provide to people, which is a little bit different, is the through line between books. Like, have you ever read a book and then go, man, like there's a connection between these two books, but they don't even know each other. And then you find it, and that's the unique idea. Like, that's my favorite thing. So maybe, in that sense, yes. But honestly, what I really do, and what our mastermind coaching program does, it's really accountability and community. That's it. That's all I do as a coach. You come to me, hey, what are you going to do this? We have this thing called an intention call on Mondays. The entire point of that is I go, all right, what are you going to execute this week? Here's the list of things that people say. Okay, great. Then on Friday, we're going to reach out to you and go, why the hell did you not do this? That's all I do. If I'm being honest, it's like, that's it. The other part of it is we have this thing called the daily focus report. And there's 5 things that we feel like, as coach, especially when you're first starting out in your business. I know that we mentioned earlier, there's people that are, beginners, so to speak, in the entrepreneur world. To me, there's only a handful of things. If you do them every single day, you'll accidentally grow a business. And we have this, that's why we have like our 5-day challenge. And so basically all I do is I ask you, did you do those 5 things every day? And I report, and you report to me and the team every single day. And what you'll find, which is super interesting about that, is that most people know what the hell to do, Richard.
Yeah.
You know what to do.
Yeah.
You do. Like, you don't need to hire a coach for that. However, you need to hire a coach, again, in my opinion, for 2 things. And that's for the accountability and the community. It's being able to reach out to people who are also in the coaching program and go, man, like, I'm really struggling with this. Like, can somebody help me? Like, what do you think? And also it's clarity. Like, a lot of the people that come to us don't have an idea. This is the kind of coach we want to be. Okay, cool. But then after a few months, they realize like that's not aligned with their purpose. Because sometimes making money, to me, if you're not making money in your business, there's tons of different things. The tactical side of what's going wrong. Maybe you're saying the wrong thing that could ruin everything, or maybe the marketing isn't wrong, or maybe you just don't care about what you're doing that much. Like you don't have, it's that you're not aligned with it. Because for me, when I was starting out and I was selling Elevated, like what it is today, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a landing page. I didn't have anything. I didn't have a team yet. Like, I had a concept in my head of how the offer should go. I didn't even have like the offer fully planned out. I just kind of had an idea, and I sold the hell out of it. Anybody I talked to became a member, and we quickly went from like in 2 weeks, I think we went from 0 members to 12, like in just like a week. So what was the difference? I was aligned. Like, I was really, that was like, this is my purpose. I need to tell everyone about this, and I will get as many people as I can that will listen to me because I think it could really help them. And so we grew. But I talked to a lot of coaches that are selling, whatever, whether it's mindset or it doesn't matter. They're selling their program, but they're like, I can't get anybody to buy it. I'm like, well, would you buy it? Like, are you aligned with it? Do you feel like it can truly help somebody? Because if the answer is no, if you even have an inkling of a doubt, they will feel it. Right? When you're doing the call, if you're not enthusiastic about it. Like, I forgot where I saw this, but there's this interesting, I think it's beautiful thing about sales where it was basically the product has to be good, but also there has to be belief in the product.
Yeah.
You have to have both.
Yeah.
If you don't have both, you're not going to make a sale.
I love it. Now, I'm a big sports geek. Always have been. And for me, and this is surprising to a lot of people, one of my favorite basketball teams was the Bad Boys of the 80s.
Yeah.
And my favorite basketball player of all time was Dennis Rodman. And the only way he succeeded, he sucked in San Antonio because the coach didn't know how to coach him. He was great with the Bulls because the coach knew how to coach him. And he was great with the Pistons because the coach knew how to coach him. I think when you have a coach, the coach is unbiased. He can tell you, listen, you may think you're great at this, but I see something else in you where I think this is what you're really good at. So I think, sometimes the coaches, if they're a good coach and they're just not somebody there to collect that paycheck every month, they'll say, listen, bro, you kind of fucked up. This is what I think you should do. Because I think this will serve you better. You know what I mean? So I think coaching, sometimes you got to be a little hard-nosed And sometimes coaches got to fire their clients sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, look, I've fired plenty of clients, and I think the reason for that is when I first started out was I didn't know who we wanted. And to be fair, I didn't know what we were really building. I knew we were building a coaching program. I just didn't know what kind. Later on, I realized, oh, like what we really are is a community, is a mastermind, as a coaching program that helps people remove excuses. But in order for that to work, you have to want to remove those excuses, and you have to almost walk into it with the understanding that you're full of shit, and it's our job to help you stop being full of shit. And a lot of the people that no longer are in our academy, we call it, are people that wanted to hold on to their excuses more than they wanted the success that they wanted. They wanted to hold on to that idea of themselves. And so with us, it's like we challenge everything. Hey, for example, one of the things is offer something every day. That's one of the things we track in the academy, and we have people report on. Offer something every day. So what does that mean? It means in your stories on Instagram. It means in the actual, feed itself, through a DM. You're going to offer something to somebody every single day. However, it does not mean you have to pitch somebody. It just means that you need to offer something that can help them. A YouTube video that you did, like something that you feel like could be of service to somebody. And it's really to get you in the habit of not thinking about sales in a negative way. It's more so getting the habit of every single day I'm going to send someone that could help somebody, right? And so if for 3 weeks in a row, I see that you scored 1 out of 5, you scored a 1, meaning you didn't do it, you didn't even think about it, and you did that for three weeks in a row. Now you and I are going to have this conversation, Richard, that goes, talk to me. Like, do you not want the success that you said you wanted? Like, what's going on? And then here comes the stories. Well, I couldn't do it because I don't have this and I don't have that, and so on and so forth. And so my job as a coach to go, all right, you and I both know you're full of shit. So I'm going to give you an option. It's kind of like the red pill, blue pill. Do you want your excuses or do you want success? Pick one, because you can't have both. It's not possible to have bullshit excuses and what you want. You can't have it. Which one do you want? And so then when you select, okay, I choose to have the success. All right, now we have to reinvent who you are, because the old you is full of excuses and full of shit. So let's invent it. So now we have a working place. So for me, again, as a coach, like that's my only job. Yes, I give information and I give you things that you could try. And of course, if you don't, but most people, look, man, have done, a bunch of different courses. They've done a bunch of different coaching programs. They've watched a ton of YouTube videos and they're still stuck where they're at. So that's not, the information isn't the problem. It's usually us.
Like Russell Brunson wrote this book, the Trilogy series, which is an amazing series. If you guys don't have the books, you need to pick them up. But it's something he talks about that I see a lot of new business owners, as soon as they start their business, every single post, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, it's always business. And for me, like I learned something from him. I post on something different every day. Like Mondays, it's faith. Tuesdays, it's family. Another day, it's podcasting, veterans, and personal development. So, your feed is not just pitching. It shows people that, you're real. It shows people that, I'm a father of 3. I got a beautiful wife. It shows that you're human. And I think eventually, if all you see is post after post of business, you eventually just swipe. Mentally, you're just like, yeah, I know what they're going to say, so I'm just going to swipe. So is that something you see with new business owners?
I see that, and I also see a fear of, and this is where the branding comes in, right? It's a fear of, okay, so people think they are afraid of putting themselves out there, but I don't think it's that. It's that they don't have clarity, and this is where branding comes in. So I have one of my first team members that I brought on was a branding coach. And the reason for that, it was after talking to him, I realized that most people's problem isn't sales or marketing, it's branding. And so when I say branding, I don't mean logos and colors. It's understanding and alignment of who you are today and how you want to represent yourself online. So your public persona. And one of the biggest problems that I see is people don't have that clarity on what they stand for. So that's why I keep mentioning again, like Elevated, our purpose is to help people realize they deserve more through removing your excuses. and obstacles, right? That's our purpose. So I say that because that's our intention. That's our purpose. That's my brand. So now it becomes this thing once you are fully aware of your brand. So you could say this is your purpose, your mission, whatever. It gets a lot easier to make content or not make content. Because what I see people do is they'll put out this piece of content and it's not aligned with their thing at all. And they wonder why it doesn't hit. They wonder why it's not doing well. And they also wonder why their audience is confused about how they work for them. So one of our things, because we remove excuses, one of our kind of things is tough love. In fact, we have a newsletter called Tough Love Tuesdays. It's usually me calling people out on their bullshit because that's our brand. All right. We don't sugarcoat anything. It would be very confusing, though, to my audience if I started posting every day about how, you should listen to your feelings. And if you don't want to do the work, don't do it. Take a rest day. Like people would be like, what the fuck? This is not, but people do that. Every day they post something different because they're trying to appease the audience instead of figure out what your personal brand is. What do you stand for? What's the hill you're willing to die on? What are your vulnerabilities? Because also that's important too. Like, a lot of my posts talk about my mistakes. Like, I when I say I offer something every day online, I don't pitch every day. I'll do a piece of content that goes, I really struggle with this, and here's a lesson that I learned recently. That's an offer. I'm offering you a lesson, right? So anyway, I think that's the biggest mistake. It's not necessarily that people don't know what to post or they're afraid or they pitch too much. I think they're unaware of how they want to stand out and be represented online. And because of that, they're all over the place.
Yeah, man, like I said, I'm a big sports geek. I'm a big I've always been a basketball guy. I love the Mamba mentality. Kobe was my favorite player of all time, and Michael was too. But one thing about either one of them, they stayed in their lane. Because I hear a lot of times just people say, yeah, well, stay in your lane. Well, Kobe says, yeah, I'm going to stay in my lane, and I'm going to dominate the shit out of that lane. And, and as far as branding goes, like when Michael Jordan would come to the podium, if he showed up in Adidas jumpsuit and Adidas sneakers, people would lose their minds because pretty much Phil Knight owned Nike, but he was the face of Nike. Mm-hmm. So, but I believe, you are your brand, whether that's good or bad, as Lance Armstrong figured out. You can either, be congruent with your brand, or you can totally screw the pooch on your brand. But, I was listening to the book called Influence when I was walking this morning, and they were talking about the new Coke and the old Coke, how they screwed the pooch, but eventually they said, all right, we messed up. We're sorry. And more people bought Coke that next year than ever before. So talk about, being your brand. And even if it messes up a little bit, people are willing to forgive if you're being open and honest.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, again, I can't say this enough, but you have to take the time to actually do the brand work. And we call it like brand therapy because it sometimes is like, it's a lot of work. But when you screw up and you're not congruent, your audience will usually tell you. And also I see people do this thing where they're afraid to even take risks. So let's say you have an established brand. Okay, I know my brand, Raylen. I got it all done. I've been doing this for 10 years. Okay, great. But now you want to pivot. You want to be known for something else. And I see people not taking that risk because they're afraid of what the audience is going to say. Now, first and foremost, most people, I won't say all, but most people are not Coke. No one knows who you are. So even if you have like 20,000 followers on Instagram, still in the grand scheme of things, no one knows who you are. No. So I always say, like, if it feels more like you, then you should do it. Like I remember when I first started off, like I was just the sales coach because I have, everyone's saying niche down, and also stay in your lane, and my lane was sales. Here's the thing. I wasn't aligned with it. Like if I had to do one more video of here are 3 things you shouldn't say on a sales call, like I wanted to die, Richard. I hated those. I have no interest in that. What I'm more passionate about is the mindset behind being it's coaching in general. Like how can I get somebody to realize their full potential and step into that? Like, that's way more interesting to me than sales. Now, if I would have listened to most people who said, no, Raylen, you got to stick with sales, You got to stick with this. You got to stick with this. I wouldn't have what I have today. So I think it's really important to take risks. And also, if your audience, again, I'm just like assuming I think every great, like big influencer at this point has made those pivots. So look at like Grant Cardone, for example. First came out, sales guy. There was a small stint where he wanted to be known for marketing. And I usually start here. And again, shout out to Tim, our branding coach. It's what do you want to be known for? That's usually the brand. So he wanted to be known for sales. Then he wanted to be known for marketing. There's like a really, really small window. He tried to do this. And then he wanted to be known for real estate. Right. So now that's what he does. And through those, he elevated and changed, his brand. His audience went with him. And yeah, I'm sure there are some people that didn't like it, but they fell off and they found somebody else. So with us, I think, again, it's just really important to take risks with your brand and just get it closer to what you want to, how you want to be represented. Because one thing I will say is the worst thing you could do is make a brand that you're not interested in, because it sucks showing up as somebody that you're not.
Yeah, and I love that. And now I want to go back to something that you talked about earlier. Since we're talking about Grant, his book 10X, I think it's one of my books that I'm reading again. But something he talks about is, in order to be great, you got to put in a certain amount of work. Like Kobe used to shoot 1,000 free throws before practice and then after practice when everybody went home. He's, because he had to put in the work. You got to put in the reps. Just like Ed Milet's new book, you got to put in one more rep. But, I think sometimes people underestimate what it's going to take to be successful in business. They think I'm just going to work 40 hours like every other Joe and I'm going to be successful. And an entrepreneur is somebody, I don't remember who said it, they're willing to work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40 for somebody else. So talk about having to put in the work and put in the reps and how much work it actually takes to become successful.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think we have to define what success is. And that's an individual level. Like, what do you, and that's why I said the golden question for me is, what do you want? Do you want millions of dollars? Cool. But do you want $1 million and a healthy relationship at home? Do you want, what exactly does that look like? I think that's number one. Because the one thing that I'm sure you've read it, because again, you're an avid reader like me, but The Gap in the Game by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And reading that book made me realize how many mistakes I was making as an entrepreneur, which I was setting these goals and then I was beating myself up for not achieving these goals, even though they're highly, they were crazy goals. And so we do this, we measure ourselves based off the gap, meaning where you are today and where you want to be. And because you're not there, you think you suck. Instead of looking backwards, how much did you gain, right, from that experience? Look at yourself between yourself today and go back 5 years from now. Yeah. That success to me is, am I constantly growing, right? So with that being said, most people today, and this is why it's a little bit tricky for what we do, because what we sell at Elevated is the work, is the understanding that you're not gonna get to where you want to be in a year. It's just not gonna happen. And I mean, everything will be like you want. And what I mean by that is most people today are selling hacks. In 90 days, I'm going to get you to 25 grand or whatever a month, there's all these hacks. I'm not saying that they're bullshit. What I am saying, though, is if it's not aligned with you and what you want, maybe you achieve it. You get the 10K in 30 days. Good for you. But to me, sustainability is about what you can consistently show up as. Can you consistently show up as that person, build on that while still maintaining healthy relationships? A healthy, relationship with yourself? Can you still maintain your fitness? Can you all around, can you win, right? Not just make the money. So for me, the hardest part is trying to sell people on the idea that, yes, this shit's going to suck. You're going to make plenty of mistakes. Your first offer you come out with, no one may buy. And if they do buy it, you may hate it. You may not want to do it. My first program, and super embarrassing, the first program I came out with is called Combat Ready, because I used to be a professional MMA fighter, and I thought it'd be a really good idea to call it Combat Ready, and it was a sales program. I probably made, when I launched it, 20 grand, 25 grand off that program. Pretty decent for my first offer. Here's the thing though, Richard, I hated that program. Because I hated sales. Everyone just told me that's what I should do to make money. And so I prioritized making money. I made this switch though, and I wanted to prioritize impact because I knew the money would come. So then I prioritized, okay, how can I create a community? How can I find an undiscovered through our agency? How can I find an undiscovered thought leader and help them get online in a bigger way? All right. When I first started doing that, wasn't really making a lot of money. Okay. I started getting a little nervous, Richard. I'm like, oh shit, like, is this a bad way? Because I'm not making money, but I'm happy. Like I'm actually like, I feel like I'm making a bigger impact. The next thing you know, we're making 20, 30 grand a month. Oh, nice. I'm making money now. But there was a window, Richard, that I was struggling financially. There was a window. And my point I'm trying to make here is this. Usually the things that's expedient, the things that are fast, the hacks, they don't last. And so what we're trying to sell, which is difficult, is this pitch going, you won't make money immediately. You'll have some low-hanging fruit that maybe you do. And maybe in the first, few months, you get to 10K, which would be cool. But that's not the goal. The goal is, can we slowly but consistently build a brand for you, a business for you that you're excited to do every day? Because life is short. What the hell? I mean, cool. You make 100K this month. Great. Did you love it? Did you enjoy it? No? Well, then let's find something that you can. Because again, you can make money doing anything.
All right. So then, like I said, I've had a lot of successful people come on the show. People like, Steve Sims, David Meltzer, Ed Milet, people like that. And of course, James Clear, Atomic Habits, of course.
Yeah.
And most of the people that are uber successful in life and in business, they have a couple things going for them. Number one, they really believe in gratitude. They're big gratitude people. Because I believe that, gratitude and anger cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So I figure, the more grateful I am, the less angry I'm going to be. But also they say that, your morning ritual and your evening ritual will set you up either for success or for failure. Now, you being the excellent person that you are, talk about your morning and evening ritual.
Yeah. So I don't have one. So I've tried every single system, like waking up at 4 a.m. For like a couple months, I used to work at 4 a.m. Because Bob Iger, the former, he's actually coming back. So he was the CEO of Disney, and he was gone, and now he's coming back. Anyway, but I found out that he wakes up at 4 a.m. And I was like trying that for a while, and it was pretty good. Here's what I found that works for me: is that more important than what time I wake up is the amount of sleep I get. So recently I got the Whoop. Not associated with this company at all, but I got it because I need to track my recovery because I'm still doing jiu-jitsu, and I'm not old by any means, but I have a lot of miles on me because I used to wrestle and all this stuff. So like I'm trying to, prioritize recovery. But anyway, my point is I don't care as much about my routines as much as I care about like blocking out time for me. So did I get the amount of sleep that I need to get? And then in the morning, I don't take meetings until after 10 my time, because from whatever time I wake up, it's usually around, because I have a 3-year-old kid, so it's usually around 5:30 to 6, so we're in that window. But what I care mostly is once I get him situated, is can I get 2 hours to myself to read, write, lift? So that's the only strategy that I have is because I have found kind of similar to gratitude. If I read every single day, I'm going to discover new ideas, new ways that I could help my clients. If I write every single day, there's my content. It's usually I usually write out different things that I'm thinking throughout the day, but also it may be a thing where I go, who could benefit from this? And so I may reach out to you personally and go, hey, I thought of something for you and whatever. So I'm creating content every single day through there, and then lift. So it doesn't mean I have to lift weights, but exercise, move my body. If I do those 3 things, I'm a great human being. If I miss one of those things, I'm an asshole. So that's for me. I don't have a morning routine per se. It's just, can I get those 3 things in a day, and everything takes care of itself when I do that.
Okay. So then I want to ask you, because you have a child, you have a family, when David Meltzer, 29 years old, kind of messed up a little bit. He said he was at work, and then all of a sudden his wife flips on the TV, and him and Little John are at the Grammys. And she told him, listen, it's either going to be me or it's going to be the business. and he bankrupted his business and closed it. $100 million business just down the tube. But now he's making, his business is worth $20 billion. But he says, I make time for my wife. I make time to call mom. I get time to just for a couple minutes to call my daughter. Those are the important things. And then everything else will flow. But I think a lot of business owners, they block out everything else except the important stuff. And then the important stuff eventually leaves and you're only left with the business. So how do you, schedule your family time?
Yeah, so I had, and this, by the way, this wasn't my idea; it was hers. But my fiance Kayla is incredibly smart and blocked out every Sunday. We have our relationship check-in. So there's a series of like 5 questions that we go through every single week to make sure that A, that we're on the same page, B, if there's anything lingering. Because look, the biggest reason why relationships don't work, in my humble opinion, is because 2 people are growing. One person is growing, but one person stops growing. It's usually what it is, right? And so we want to make sure that we're growing, although parallel. We're not going to grow on the same path because she's different than me, has different interests, but we want to make sure that we're both growing parallel to each other. And so that report, and we also work together. So she is our chief of staff at Elevated. She takes care of everything that I just suck at. She's like the Wizard of Oz. She's behind the scenes, but actually runs a business, one of those.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so we also have a separate meeting, which is our mastermind between the 2 of us, which is business related, because it's also difficult to separate the 2. So for me, to make my relationships incredibly important is I usually am done with work after a certain time, especially when we have my son. I make sure that I plan out time with him, but also on the relationship side, we have 2 separate meetings, one work related, one not. That's just for us. Then of course we have date night every Saturday. So, but for me, I have to have them in the calendar, Richard. If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. And so she knew that, and she knows that I'm very like disciplined in terms of like the system we have. So she put it in her calendar to make sure that it gets done. So that was the best way for us.
All right. So now I love it because for me, my wife is my best friend. She's known me for almost 40 years. And without her, this company wouldn't run. I wouldn't have the life that I have. So, but now last question I have, because everybody knows that this podcast is a teaching episode and teaching podcast. And I want somebody to always walk out of here with some actionable steps that they can take and use. So what are the 3 top actionable steps a person can take if they just started a business November 28th, 2022? What are 3 actionable steps they can take today or this week?
So here's what we'll do. Here's the 3 things. So number 1 would be developing your personal brand, if that's something that you want. And to develop that, I think you can start with 2 basic things. Number 1 would be, what do you want to be known for, right? Like if something went past you, your brand went past you, people heard about your brand, came back to you, like what would they be saying? What do you want to be known for? The second part, which I think would be like, if that's the North Star, this would be, south on the compass, is what's your vulnerabilities? What is your kryptonite? No one and this is a thing that people talk about a lot, but if you remember back in the old days when Superman was in comics, right? No one cared about Superman until they introduced the concept of kryptonite. When he was just out there beating the crap of all the bad guys and he couldn't lose, no one cared. It was boring, right? But we need a kryptonite. So what is your kryptonite? What is the thing? What's your vulnerability? So that's 1. Develop your personal brand. Number 2 is do your content. Show up every single day. Now, look, how you show up obviously is filtered through your personal brand, but show up in the story, show up wherever. What I have found to be true for me, and there's always this question of quality versus quantity. When you first start out, put out content. Find your style that you like, and it may be different. Maybe it's you taking small snippets of your day. Like I could be videotaping this right now for 2 seconds, videotape me on the bike, working out, videotape me making coffee. You piece it together and just do a voiceover of a lesson you learned for the day. Maybe that's your content, or maybe it's just single post, whatever. Do something different every single day. Don't worry about stirring something up. Don't worry about, whether or not someone's going to like it. No one gives a shit. Find what works for you. Your people will find it. And then finally, would be offer something every single day. You have to do outreach. And I get it that people don't want to feel salesy. Just go out there and try to offer people help. I mean, one of the coolest strategies that like I enjoy, especially with you with a podcast, if you have a podcast or even if you don't, start a show and simply just invite people that you would love to work with on the show.
Yeah.
And then you spend an hour with them, more than likely, Richard, they're there to do what? Afterwards go, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then there's your sales call, and you just built an hour worth of trust equity with them. So if you do those three things, there's no reason why you couldn't be successful building whatever business you're building.
I love it. So now, last question I have is, how do we find you? How do we support you and your mission? Because I never say that your business, because I believe people that are uber successful in life, they have missions. They don't just have a business. So how can we support your mission?
Yeah. And again, I've said it like I think 15 times in this thing, but our only mission is to help people remove excuses. That's it. Like that's all I want to do. And so I think the easiest way to find me is just on YouTube, Instagram. Just look up Raylen Davis, Raylen Davis, anywhere. And we also, the biggest way that I want to support anyone that's listening is our 5-day challenge. So it's all over the place. If you go to our social media and just again look me up. But our 5-day challenge is everything we talked about earlier. It's the 5 things that if you report on every single day will naturally grow. And it's me calling you out for 5 days. And the only reason why is, yes, you possibly make some money as you do it, and that's cool. But the real reason for the 5-day challenge is because I want to prove to people that they can like not have any excuses. That's it. Like it's just remember I said earlier, I want to open the door and show you where it is. It's up to you to walk through it. So if you want to test yourself and see if you can actually remove your bullshit excuses, do the 5-day challenge. And again, just look it up online and Raylen Davis on YouTube and Instagram and all the fun stuff. We're everywhere.
I love your YouTube channel. And
thanks, man. I just subscribed to yours as well. It looks good.
And I think your Instagram is fire. So I just want to put
Thank you, man.
I just want to put that out there. So guys, make sure that you check Raylen out. If you want a better life, make sure that he's in it. Also, guys, like you guys know, every year I do my Today I Decide mental health summit. And the reason why I wear the shirt every day, I got more shirts than this, but it's because Today I Decide are the 3 most important words in the English language. You don't have to be the same person when you go to bed tonight than when you woke up this morning. So guys, like we talked about earlier, make the decision to either be a victim or be the victor. And make sure to make the choice to check out Raylen. Make sure you're checking out our podcast. If this touched you in any way, leave a comment, because I'm sure Raylen would love to hear some feedback on what we talked about today.
Appreciate you, man.
All right, brother. Have an amazing week. And guys, remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Raylen, have an amazing week, brother.
All right, you too, man. Thanks for having me.